Good morning. I'm Michelle Russo, the Chief Communications Officer at the U.S. Chamber. Thanks for joining us this morning to talk about some of the business response to coronavirus. The U.S. Chamber felt like it was important to gather business leaders representing different areas that are dealing directly with mitigating the impact of coronavirus in order to inform you and the public about a lot of their activities. So joining CEO Tom Donohue of the Chamber, we have Nicholas Callio, President and CEO of Airlines for America, Roger Dow, President and CEO of the U.S. Travel Association, Chip Rogers, President and CEO of the American Hotel and Lodging Association, and Stephanie Martz, Chief Administrative Officer and General Counsel of the National Retail Federation. At the Chamber, we take our role very seriously in being the voice of American business and helping businesses coordinate on response issues. Thank you for coming here today to cover this important event. Our mic runners will come to you for when we open to questions. I'll turn it over to Tom for some opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be brief, but I hope useful, and so let me start. Today, as you look at the press, there is a continued concern about the global spread of coronavirus and its impact on both public health and, underline this, the economy. While these concerns are certainly understandable, our response has to be grounded in fact, not fear. What we're telling our members, and that's critical, is the same advice we're following ourselves. Be prudent, be prepared, and don't overreact. We should be guided by the facts and the advice from medical experts and the federal, state, and local officials who are dealing with this situation. That largely means business as usual with limited exceptions. The Chamber will continue to hold meetings and events to support the important work of our members and to drive the vitality of our economy. We will, for example, next week hold our mid-year board meeting in Florida, followed by a meeting of a large group of Chamber of Commerce executives from around the country. Internationally, there are areas, of course, that we're not traveling and where the travel bans are in effect, but we are continuing to conduct business in countries that are not considered high risk. Domestically, our work will go on as usual. Should the government's medical advice change significantly, domestically or locally, then we'll follow suit. The U.S. Chamber is working closely with the White House, other U.S. government agencies, and foreign government officials to inform and equip business with the most up-to-date information. We're also providing resources to the business community. The U.S. Chamber's Foundation has produced 2 practical planning documents, Guidance for Employers to Plan and Respond to the Coronavirus and Corona Workplace Tips for Employees. And we'll get that away. I urge all U.S. businesses, especially those who might still lack an action plan, to download these documents and build their own response. What can business do to help? Now is the time, we said, to listen to experts, to stay informed, and to take reasonable measures to prepare. Now is not the time to overreact or panic. Fear and panic undermine our ability to contain the virus, to minimize disruptions to daily life, and to keep our economy humming along. Americans should continue to monitor the situation, but feel confident as they go about their daily lives, head to work, conduct meetings, and drop off their children at school. And businesses working together with government should help instill a confidence and calm as we deal with this issue. That's just what we're doing here in the Chamber, and we encourage our members to do the same. Together, all of us can make sure the impact is as small as we can, the recovery is swift, and that individuals, families, and employers can get back to full business as soon as possible. Thank you very much. Now, Nick has to go to a meeting at the White House. I was going to say you're going to fly away, but we're going to get to him right now. Go.
Thank you, Tom. Hi, I'm Nick Callier. I'm the President and CEO of Airlines for America. We represent the major U.S. airlines, both passenger and cargo. The safety, health, and well-being of our crews and our passengers is always our utmost priority. We won't fly them somewhere that is not safe. Airlines have been taking multiple steps to help contain and stop the spread of the novel coronavirus. We're working around the clock and have announced waivers and updated travel policies to accommodate customers, including waiving change and cancellation fees. Additionally, we've been working continuously with several federal agencies, including DOT, DHS, HHS, and CDC, as well as the White House. As Tom noted, later this morning, I and my board will be meeting with the Vice President and his senior team. We look forward to talking to them about pragmatic, effective solutions that can, in a practical way, further our shared goal of protecting the traveling public, ideas that we've been talking about for weeks. We remain hopeful that the federal government will act expeditiously to obtain contact information as quickly as possible directly from arriving passengers, international passengers. We have thought and still think that building a website and developing an app will be the quickest way to obtain verifiable and accurate contact information. We have been urging HHS and CDC to do so for weeks. Other countries have already accomplished this, and so should the United States. The U.S. airlines believe in this so much that we have contracted to create an app and a website. We were told that we could get the app done in 2 weeks and the website would be up and running in 4 weeks. We have offered to pay for this construction of the website and give it to the U.S. government for their use. We're grateful for the efforts of the White House, and we commend President Trump's decisive action to put Vice President Pence in charge of the task force. We need their continued strong leadership during this public health crisis, one that should be measured, as Tom noted. We also appreciate comments made by the Vice President and some members of the President's task force. Vice President Pence said at a recent press conference, there's been no recommendation on any limitations on travel in the United States. The risk remains low. Dr. Robert Redfield, director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, had a similar message, saying, I just want to echo again that the risk is low. The risk is low. I encourage Americans to go about their life. That includes travel to California, Oregon, and Washington. And mayors around the country are reminding all of us that their cities are open for business, including Washington's Mayor Muriel Bowser. A few days ago, she said the district is open for business. The district is prepared to deal with a health emergency and will get information out to the public about all of our communication strategies. I invite you to hear more about their words and read more about what U.S. airlines are doing for the traveling public on a newly created webpage, airlinestakeaction.com. Airlinestakeaction.com. Take a look at it. This webpage will be updated regularly with new information to ensure that the latest updates are available to the public and help all constituencies make informed decisions. Thank you very much to the Chamber for getting us all together today. I do apologize in advance. Thanks.
Well, fly away. Okay, Roger.
Thanks, Tom. Good morning. I'm Roger Dow, and I'm President and CEO of the U.S. Travel Association. Our association represents the entire travel industry in the United States, and we focus on getting people to travel to and within the United States. I know it wouldn't be unexpected for you to hear the head of a travel association say it's okay to travel, but there are no current warnings, as you've heard from several people already, for travel in the United States. U.S. government officials have cautioned that travel abroad in certain high-risk areas should be watched, but they've clearly said their risk to travel in the United States is low. As Americans, we should react appropriately and avoid overreacting. I often say, without safety and security, there can be no travel, and that's true today, as has been with previous challenges. That's why we're in collaboration with the CDC, HSS officials, and why we listen closely to the guidance for travelers offered by the CDC and other public health officials. We're urging the vast industry to share this message, and we're encouraging the traveling public to practice it. Expert guidance tells us that for the majority of Americans, travel within the United States is safe and should go on unimpeded. The CDC is clearly saying that we should practice the best hygiene practices and take steps that we would all typically take during flu season. Doing so should help us continue with our events of our daily lives, whether we're traveling or whether we're at home. Now it's springtime, just ahead of the peak travel season for business and leisure, spring break, family vacations, conventions, and trade shows. And it's reasonable that all headlines that the Americans might be questioned whether it's safe to travel, but they should continue with their upcoming travel plans. At present, with proper health practices in place, there is no official guidance whatsoever that travel with the U.S. should be curtailed or canceled. I myself am following what the health officials say and traveling by air this week and next week to 5 different cities. I got my boarding pass right here, and my family and I, we're going to Florida, and we're going to travel, and we're going to keep traveling. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roger. You want to go with it?
I'll go, yes, thanks. Chip Rogers, President and CEO of the American Hotel and Lodging Association. I want to thank the Chamber for inviting us here and bringing together these voices to bring some reason to what is happening right now. On behalf of the 8.5 million folks who work in our industry, we're here to echo the message of travel is safe, hotels are clean, and I think that's really one of the concerns that we face. But before I get into those remarks, I want to say our thoughts and prayers, and hopefully everybody agrees with me, go to the families in Tennessee where 24 people died yesterday. That is a tragedy that sadly has gone somewhat unnoticed, unfortunately. But we're here today to talk about what's happening now with the spread of this particular situation. So the guidelines from the CDC that have been widely spread and people are talking about, thankfully, really deal a lot with how do you remain clean? What precautions can you take? The hotel industry has been living up to those standards for a long time, well before this. We've gone beyond those standards even this time, adding additional cleanings to hotels. So when we look at the safety of our industry and our hotels, it's as good or better than it has ever been. But the fact is that there's no place in the United States right now that is not safe to travel. As Roger mentioned a moment ago, it's still safe to travel. Spring break is coming up. Millions of Americans, whether it be students or families, should not be putting off those plans out of fear. Yes, we all need to take precautions. We've begun taking those precautions. We've gone beyond what has been expected of us. But if you think about the challenges that we face, sometimes an overreaction to fear could be even worse than not taking any precautions at all. So that's the message today. Don't overreact. It is safe to travel, at least in our space, and with everyone up here, everything is status quo. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tom, for convening this and giving us an opportunity to talk a little bit about what our industries are doing. I think the most important thing we can be doing right now is sharing information, talking about what we're doing, making sure that the public is assured that we're all following best practices and following the best advice that we're getting from the CDC and others in the government who are working very hard on this. We recognize in the retail industry that this is a very serious issue, and we're engaging our workers, our customers, and our communities accordingly. NRF has regularly been convening retail industry leaders around the country to share information in as close to real time as we possibly can with government officials, health officials, people on the ground who are working on this situation. As recently as several days ago, we hosted a call with 500 retail industry leaders with Dr. Nancy Messonnier from the CDC, and she very helpfully shared the 4 C's of responding to a situation like this. And they definitely spoke to our members, to retailers, because these are the kinds of things that we have to focus on every day, regardless of whether it's whether the challenge we might be facing is a flood or a fire or the recent tragedy in Nashville. We have to focus on these things. We have to focus on our customers and making sure that their health and well-being is top of mind. We have to focus on our colleagues. We have to focus on the community and making sure that we are responding to situations in a way that's appropriate for the context of what's happening in that community. And we have to ensure the continuity of our businesses. and the availability of goods and services to the people who rely on us to do that. Nothing's more important than those 4 C's. It's true that there has been some supply chain disruption coming out of China. We are increasingly hearing, though, that those factories and those lines of supply are coming back online, 30, 40, as much as 50% at this point. Some of the slowdown was a result of the Lunar New Year. February is always the slowest time for factories in China, but things are gradually bouncing back. We expect that situation to continue to improve week by week as time goes by. And, as for the overall health of the U.S. economy and consumer spending, we have really healthy building blocks in place right now. We're coming off of a strong year of growth last year, 3.7% sales growth. NRF just released our economic forecast a few days ago, and we are expecting more of the same healthy growth, if not a little bit higher, for the coming year. Unemployment is low, wages are rising, and we don't think that this situation is going to pose any lasting long-term negative effect on our industry or on other industries. The thing to keep in mind is, as Chairman Powell said yesterday, we don't have enough information to predict what the overall future impact of the economy is going to be, and so it's irresponsible to speculate, and certainly to speculate negatively at this point, given that we have some really strong building blocks in place. So as retailers, we're going to continue to monitor the situation. As a trade association, our highest and best use is to make sure that we're getting good real-time information to our members. That's exactly what we're doing, making sure that they have a place to convene and share best practices and share some of the things that they're doing for their employees and their customers. And like everybody else here at this table, we're just taking this day by day. We're being prudent. We're not panicking. I don't think panicking is ever the smart default position. And we really appreciate your being here this morning.
Thank you, Stephanie. We'll take questions for the panel. Right here in the blue jacket.
Hi, Rich Miller with Bloomberg. The message is don't panic. I guess a couple of questions related to that. Did the Fed panic yesterday with an emergency rate cut? Are investors panicking by pushing stocks down by 10% within a week? And the third thing is, is there any concern about credit flowing to businesses? We've seen a number of other countries, Italy, South Korea, China, take steps to make sure that credit flows to companies, especially if their business is disrupted. Excuse me. Do we need to do something like that here?
Let me do this. Let me do the last one first. There's a vigorous activity on the Hill on a package that would provide both resources and processes to help companies, particularly smaller companies, in need. We have done this on numerous occasions in the past. There's a system that works, and it'll be available, and this should get done tomorrow or the next day. I think that'll be available very quickly. In terms of the Fed, I think the Fed made a judgment that said if we drag our feet on this for the next week and a half, hoping it goes away, we're not going to be ahead of the game. We're not going to be trying to give people confidence that this economy will continue to prosper. And as far as any other issue in terms of the stock market, look, the stock market goes up and down, like the clock goes around. I'm not going to sit here and say I like losing a lot of money, but when we started at almost 30,000, and anybody that is involved in the stock market knew that the top 10% of that was going up and down very quickly, no matter what happened on what issue. I believe the market, and I don't guess markets, But I believe the market, it goes up and go down, but it eventually goes up. And that's the least of our problems right now. Our problem is to restore a little bit of calm. Our problem is to look out at the television when we see stores, when we see gas stations, when we see restaurants, and all the things people are doing, and understand if we don't go to work, none of that happens. And our message is very simple. Be safe. If you don't feel well, stay home, or otherwise let's go to work, because we have to keep people fed, we have to keep them mobile, we have to keep them educated, and this is a very, very important time for us to act, not to react.
Let me follow up on that. I would say that I think what we're saying here is make fact-based decisions. This morning and every day this week, I ride the Metro. I made a fact-based decision. It's completely safe to ride Metro. On Monday, I was in the Atlanta airport, the busiest airport in the world. I made a fact-based decision. It was completely safe to fly out of the Atlanta airport. And if people will do that, then we don't have to worry about emotional decisions that come along based on fear. As was mentioned a moment ago, the economy is extremely strong right now. If we would have this discussion 2 weeks ago, no one would have been saying anything different. That has not changed. And if people will continue to make decisions that are based on fact, based on the guidelines from the experts, and that's critical, based on the guidelines that are being given to us from health experts, then this will pass, and will pass hopefully very, very quickly.
Right here, Serena. This gentleman right here.
Yeah, so Walt Williams, CU Update. We are starting to see U.S. trade shows and business conferences get canceled or postponed as businesses restrict travel, business travel, and cut back on their own conferences. You talk a lot about overreaction. Do you believe that these businesses are overreacting? And if so, if they have concerns about business travel at this time, what should their appropriate response be?
You want to do it first?
Yeah, I'll take that. Yes, we are seeing cancellations, and the question of overreacting, they're not listening to what the facts are, as Chip just said. The facts are there are no restrictions on travel, and I'm sure they're getting some pressure from concerned people that watch the media, but the facts are there's no restrictions. But we are seeing cancellations, and that hurts the people that need the jobs. When someone cancels a meeting, who's out of work? Not me, but a housekeeper, a waiter, a waitress. The people need the jobs most, and it's so important to the American economy that these trade shows and these various meetings take place. It's critical to jobs.
And
Go ahead.
If I could add, this is obviously anecdotal, but I have also seen a lot of emails from folks, conferences that people in my office are attending, that our members are attending, that say the conference is still on, and we're still going forward. We encourage people to come. And the interesting thing is that for the conferences scheduled for March, for instance, that are moving forward, the attrition rate is, I've heard 7, 8, 10%, maybe sometimes as much as 20%. So people, when the conference is held, people still want to go. I think people are on their own making very rational decisions about their own health and safety, again, based on the facts, based on the guidance that the CDC is currently relaying to us.
On those trade shows, by the way, some of those are major international events where people come from all over the world, and I don't think they're canceling them, they're delaying them, and they are so critical to those industries. You'll see them soon. But here in the United States, we're encouraging people to do the domestic meetings, and we're not talking about it, we're doing it.
Ben?
Ben Brody, could you guys talk a little bit about what you're asking the Trump administration and Congress for in terms of relief and help? Tom, you talked a little bit about resources generally, but if you guys could drill down, that'd be really useful.
Well, this has been I'll give you one, I'll give you two, I'll give you three. What the administration asked for is now much higher. It appears that the Congress will be providing something in the as of last time I read it last night, $7.5 billion for the basic issues of helping companies, sustaining the economy, and providing whatever additional resources are needed to healthcare providers. Whatever else finds its way in there will be, as traditionally been the experience of federal appropriations. Whatever this country is going to need to do their business and to protect their citizens, the Congress will provide. It's our history, it's our spirit, and it just takes a little time to figure out what's going on, and you'll see it happens. It's not a Democratic issue. It's not a Republican issue. It's a community issue, and we're very comfortable with it, and we will support the Congress and the administration in doing what's necessary.
If I could follow quickly on that, and Tom mentioned something I think is critically important. This really sad thing we've seen happen in the last couple of weeks is the politicization of this situation. That is not helping at all, right? If we focus on the facts, we will make right decisions. The economy will quickly get back in order. But if politicians use this opportunity to advance their own cause, they're not helping anybody but themselves, and hopefully the general public can see that.
Go ahead.
It is the season, though.
James Rosen with Sinclair. Thank you very much for convening this. I want to ask two separate questions. First, about a key business sector whose conduct in this episode you seem to be indicting, and that would be the news media. Is that the locus where you identify all of this overreaction and panic-mongering, et cetera? That's the first question.
I think the news media has been reporting the facts, but as you look at it, all the graphics and things that go with it cause a lot of question. I think we'd love to see a lot more balance on the facts of travel and CDC. The news media hasn't been fanning the flames, but there's been so many pictures and this and that, and they haven't heard the right side of what the facts are in CDC. So we'd just like to see that continue and more facts about safety to travel.
Well, you've heard many stories about folks who have canceled meetings or canceled travel. I've not read much about people that are continuing with meetings and continuing with travel. Tom, I know here at the Chamber, you guys host a lot of meetings, and every single one of them is continuing. I was talking to another hotel organization just yesterday that hosts over 200 meetings a year, and I asked them the simple question, have you canceled a single one of those 200 meetings? And they said no. Every single one of those 200 meetings is going to continue. So that's the balance, I guess, that would be helpful.
Second question is about another key actor in this whole scenario, and that's China. And I wonder if you think this episode, whose true effects obviously remain unknown at this point, should provide American business with a moment for serious re-examination of the depth and scope and nature of our business dealings with and in China?
Well, it's a very interesting question, and let's look at it this way. 95% of the people that American companies want to sell things to are outside this country. And a big 1.4, I'm just trying to get the numbers right, and I'm not going to do that. A huge number, I was trying to do my China thing. And by the way, I'm very current on the China deal. We were very involved in the effort to bring China to reality on the trade issue, supported the administration on that. We were very involved in the first trade deal that had more in it than most people think. And we're very aware that a country of that size and that scope is essential to the global economy, and we want to have a hunk on it. To just give up China and tell everybody else to go involve themselves with that economy it's not a good idea economically, and it is certainly not a good idea geopolitically for our well-being. On the other hand, it has to be a vigorous arrangement. We have to press people to keep their agreements under trade agreements, and we have to work with and support China as they deal with this activity, while at the same time demanding that they live by the standards that we think should be employed during this difficult time, and generally, I think they're responding very well. They had so many people that they sent home that putting the system back together, as was well explained, has got another couple of weeks behind it. And then the transportation moving in and out of ports on the supply chain is still going to take a couple of weeks. You asked a very good question. We're all thinking our way through this, and we're working with China on it, and the Chamber is every day.
I just want to put one thing in perspective. On China travel, last year we had 3 million Chinese travelers to the U.S. Those 3 million Chinese travelers spent more than 22 million Canadian travelers. We love the Canadians, but it's very important to the economy to the tune of about $30 billion of travel between our countries.
Right here. Here's the microphone.
Hi, Rachel Siegel from the Washington Post. Thank you for holding this panel. So as you're describing, it's safe to travel. There's no need for people to cancel their spring break plans or to continue with their conferences. Can you just share any insight into the specific numbers you're seeing around cancellations, whether that's hotel rooms or flights, just to give us some sort of sense of what you're seeing so far?
I have one number, and I'll leave it to Roger and you guys to do that. The only number is, I told you we're doing our board meeting in Florida starting next Sunday, and we traditionally know how many people are coming to the actual board meeting, and people cancel. They have a business thing, and all this week we haven't seen a single cancellation.
We just came out the other day with our predictions on travel for the next 3 months, and international travel we're forecasting as being 6% down. That's about $3 billion. But the one thing that on China, this is trending down. I've been watching the numbers week by week, and the very first 3 weeks they had about 5,000 cases. The next 3 weeks they had over 70,000 cases. The last 3 weeks they had 7,000 cases. So this isn't a cycle, and we'll probably see the same cycle in the United States of this trending down like normal flu.
In the hotel industry, for the most part, it's anecdotal right now because you really began hearing about cancellations late last week. And so we don't have those numbers, and particularly don't have them on a forward-looking basis. And keep in mind with leisure travel, a traveler could wait up to 24, 48 hours to cancel their hotel room, so we don't know that yet. Business travel is much different. But I would expect within the next week or so we'll have much more solid numbers.
Next question right here.
Hi, Anna Swanson with the New York Times. Stephanie, you mentioned supply chain disruptions. I wondered if I could ask you and Tom for just some more details on that. What industries are being affected primarily by supply chain disruptions? Also, you mentioned factories restarting. I presume that's in China, but will we see other disruptions in Japan or South Korea or elsewhere? And are there any more permanent changes to supply chains that might come out of this, or is this really a temporary situation?
Why don't you go first?
Yeah, so I don't have any hard numbers on any disruptions in any other countries. I think most of what we've heard is concern about products coming out of China, especially Wuhan and that general area. We've already heard stories about how some electronics manufacturers are the ones that have been hardest hit in terms of getting the parts that they need and having the actual devices that are manufactured there completed and shipped to the U.S. There have not been significant disruptions for a lot of the consumer goods that people are needing now. I mean, everybody knows when they go to the store right now, it's pretty hard to find hand sanitizer and some basic things like that. For the demand for products like that has been virtually unprecedented, and so trying to get those products back into the supply chain and into stores is something that our members are working on pretty much 24/7. But I think given that there was a little bit of a natural slowdown in February because of the lunar holiday that our members had already planned for, the impact is actually not quite as much as you might have otherwise expected. And China has been pretty quick getting things back online, finding alternatives even for some of our U.S. companies to find the facilities and the equipment that they need to keep their supply chains humming along. And, I do want to emphasize that the story of China is more complex than just supply chain. They are a huge market for us to sell U.S. goods, to sell U.S. farm products. They are huge customers in our stores. I mean, one of the first things that we heard about among our retailers who do business there is that the only decrease in shopping that our folks were seeing were among stores where the customers are primarily Chinese, which stands to reason. Otherwise, shopping has been up. Shopping's been booming, not surprisingly, as people continue to prepare for what, the facts on the ground currently do not suggest will be any kind of a major health crisis, but, people are laying in some goods in advance for sure.
On the supply chain, it follows a little bit of the discussion here. The supply chain began to change during the trade debates and the differences of opinion between the U.S. and China on the and tariffs and other issues. And so companies began to adjust some of their supply chains very carefully, because you don't want to lose that huge market to sell things in or to buy things from. And the big thing to know about supply chain, when you change it, you don't readily change it back, because it's very expensive to re-alter the way the whole supply chain works. And when you get it there, you're going to leave it. You might move half of it and leave the other half there, but the United States is really good at that. In recent years, we've developed skilled people and processes and technology that have really helped the benefit of our trade, and we're taking real careful aim at not letting them get broken up. It's very critical that we protect our supply chains.
Next question.
Hi, it's Will Malden with the Wall Street Journal. Thanks for having this, and let me know if you covered this before I got here, but I wanted to ask, some of us, I think, were surprised to see some of our own companies, discouraging non-essential travel. And I started to wonder, do you think that companies are worried about the liability of having their employees travel or potentially spread the virus? We know a lot of big companies like to think about these issues in a defensive way, and if so, or if not, what would you say to them?
Well, I, of course, know the companies you're talking about, and I think there are three issues here. Companies are very careful about risk. In fact, we never used to have risk specialists in our companies, and we all have them, you see. And the second thing, if you're not going to run some meetings, or if people that you're not going to go to China or you're not going to go to Korea, then the idea is to look around to keep your economy going, keeping your company percolating at the level that the markets are going to respond well to them. You got to take your costs down. And when do you take the costs down? Some people, I think, have said, well, if we're not going to run the party, then we're not going to buy the food, and they're not encouraging traveling for that reason. I think this will go on for a short period of time, and then when this mellows out a little bit, I think people are going to start traveling, and I'll tell you why. If my salesman is out selling this group something and yours is sitting home, you're going to change that in a big hurry.
Right here.
Hi, Dave Shepardson from Reuters. Two questions. One, what is your near-term forecast in terms of domestic travel? Roger, I know you talked a bit about international travel being down 6% in the next 3 months. How much do you think it's going to reduce hotel bookings and air travel? And secondly, how concerned are you about the administration imposing additional travel restrictions as it has with people who have visited either China or Iran?
Domestic travel, by the same predictions that we looked at, we were looking at probably being up about 2%. Domestic leisure travel has been the darling of the industry. It's been very, very strong for the past 3 or 4 years, up 4 to 6%. As Chip said, we don't have numbers yet. I expect a small dip to go on, but again, if the people listen to the experts, they'll keep traveling, and as Tom said, the salesman will get back on the road.
Let me follow up with that. I mean, you've seen society change in many ways, and one of what we talk about a lot in our industry is the experience. People still want that experience. So even if there's a small dip here in domestic travel, there's going to be pent-up demand that will be met after that. It's been an amazing run for our industry. There's no question about it. You've had 10 years of an expanding industry. A lot of that is because the friction in traveling has been reduced in the United States. Our friends from the airports and the airlines have really helped with that. The cost of travel, of getting in your car, is so much cheaper. All of that will remain after this problem goes away, and hopefully any demand that was there prior to this problem will be there afterwards. So there may be a small dip, as Roger mentioned, but for the entire year, we think domestic travel will remain strong.
Near the back? No, behind. Oh, you needed the mic, sorry. Thanks. Thanks for waiting.
Hi, Richard Escobedo with CBS News. I wanted to ask you, Stephanie, what steps is your group taking to allay consumer fears about going into the store? At some point, consumers are worried about going out of their house to buy things. How do you reassure consumers that it's safe to go and spend money? And then I also have a question for you, Tom. Do you think the administration acted quickly enough to appoint a czar and to get this whole government response activated and in full swing? Thank you.
Well, I'll start by saying I think anyone who went to a store this weekend can attest to the fact that people are not currently concerned about what's going to happen to them if they go to a store and buy the food that they need or pick up some clothes that they need for their kids or school supplies or whatever it is that whatever errands they have to run over the weekend. But we have been, both directly through NRF and through our members, just making sure that everybody has the most up-to-date factual information about what the CDC guidance actually is for people living and working in the United States. I think it's really that simple. Events like this are extremely helpful. And I think the more we can just get that word out there, again, not just as a trade association, but through our members, the more we can reassure people that it's fine to go to their local department store or their local grocery store. You know, people don't look at those things globally. Their local grocery store is the store they go to. Their local clothing store or their local florist or dry cleaner is their store. And so they're both processing the general information that's out there that's coming from the CDC, and we're helping them to do that. But they also have a certain level of trust and loyalty with the stores that they go to on a daily basis. And I think that is what, at the end of the day, is going to keep consumer confidence high and keep people feeling very confident that they can go about their daily lives in a normal way.
On the political, I'm going to answer the question about the administration's speed of action. I think, first of all, you have to understand that we didn't have to go out and invent the professional and the medical and the scientific expertise to deal with this problem. If you look at the CDC, the NIH, all of the high-end research hospitals and research centers, we've got the best people in the world, bar none, and they're all here. And then you get a czar. Why do you have a czar? Well, you have a czar because if we didn't have sort of somebody organizing this and everybody was talking at the same time, you wouldn't be doing the right thing. Do I think that it was convenient in a political process for some people not to like which czar we got? We should have gotten a different czar, or that we didn't do it fast enough, we did it slow enough. I think they did it in a very reasonable time. And I think they bring together all those assets that exist. They've been here, they've been working, They run full time. They follow everything that's going on around the world. They get experience, and I have great confidence in them. You know, I like the vice president. I've known him for a long time, so he's a good czar. I could find five other people we could make a czar for, but I wouldn't want to have the best czar in the world and none of the people that are going to do the work. We have them all, and they're damn good.
Thank you. Question here.
Hi, Sam Mintz with Politico. I was going to ask Nick this, but because he left, I'll put it to Roger and Tom. If the current air travel trends continue, will there be a need for Congress and the Trump administration to provide a bailout or another form of financial assistance to the airlines?
I'll address that. I don't think using the bailout is smart, but I think the government would be extremely smart if they were to stimulate travel, because everything that travel does, it's trade, it's commerce, and important. And I'll tell you one thing, if I were going to book a trip, I would book it right now. Pricing is elastic, so what's happening, the airlines, the hotels are going to start putting out deals. The smartest thing someone can do is book their travel now, because it's not going to last. This thing has a cycle, and when it's over, prices are going to go back up again.
My view, I agree. We don't need any bailouts here. As we said, there are going to be help for small companies, in particular in terms of loans and the types of things the government traditionally provides. There are a lot of regional airlines and others that are critical. If they get in some amount of difficulty, we'll figure out a way to bring assets together to keep them flying. Bottom line is we're going to run just like business as usual with a little higher heartbeat and get it done.
Probably one more question?
Yeah, she's had her hand up for it.
Yeah, she can I get back? We'll try to get back to you because you did get to ask one. I want to call in this lady in the back who's been very patient. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Harriet Torrey with the Wall Street Journal. You mentioned that the advice to people who feel sick is to stay at home. But about 50% or more than 50% of low-wage workers in the U.S., many of them in the service industry, don't have access to even a day of paid sick leave. So if they do feel sick, they have to decide between their health and their financial stability. So what I wanted to ask was whether you feel, is there any urgency in the business community or the administration to change these sick leave policies, given the fact that of the potential public health risk of people coming to work when sick because they need the money?
Well, there's been a progressive growth in the number of healthcare policies that provide sick leave, probably because of the extraordinary shortage of workers in the country right now. I don't think in the few days that we have been working with this challenge that there are people running around changing their policies, but my view, and I know a lot of the people that run the big companies, and they're going to respond to whatever it takes to keep the workforce stable. They're not going to lay as many people off as some people think they might, for the fear that their major competitor will run out and hire a bunch of them. There is a real shortage of work. Let's see what happens over the next few weeks. I think you will find people acting in their own self-interest, and that will be beneficial to all. And we hope there won't be so many people at home sick.
In our industry, being that we're hospitality, we come in contact with guests every single day, those policies have always been in place. They're in place exactly the same for the flu. If someone doesn't feel well, every single hotel company in this country that I'm aware of has the same or similar policies that say stay home. We've not heard of a single instance so far from any hotel or hotel-related company that suggests that anything like that is happening. So if the message is, as it has always been, you don't feel good, stay home, that message continues today. And the good thing is there's some heightened awareness around it. So someone who in the past may not have said to themselves, you know, I don't feel 100% today, I think there's more awareness and that they would probably stay home or be more likely to stay home today.
Her concern was that many people at that working level don't have sick leave coverage. So, good question, and come back and ask me about it in a few weeks, and I'll tell you what I think is going on.
Thanks, everyone, for the considerable time you spent with us this morning to have your questions answered. We appreciate it.